The biting rain soaked through my cheap blazer as I sprinted toward the towering metallic monolith of my final job interview. Before I could catch my breath, a security guard shoved me toward a closing VIP elevator. I stumbled forward, crashing into a chest as unyielding as solid iron. A dizzying mix of expensive cologne and dark tobacco filled my lungs. I looked up, meeting feral obsidian eyes. A hand wrapped around my chin, tilting my face upward. "Get out!" he growled. I swatted his grip away, glaring back. "Maybe watch where you're standing." The doors chimed open on the top floor. I bolted, leaving the arrogant stranger behind, and rushed into the HR director's office. Morgan, a woman with crimson lips and a stare like ice, tossed my resume onto the floor. "You lack the pedigree we require," she sneered. I knelt, picking up the damp paper, then rattled off 3 critical flaws in their public financial ledgers. Morgan's smug expression vanished, replaced by pale panic. "You're hired," she whispered. Before I could celebrate, the office door flew open with a deafening crash. The terrifying man from the elevator strode in. Morgan leaped from her chair, stammering, "President Caldeira." He ignored her, stalking straight toward me. He snatched the offer letter from my trembling fingers and ripped it into halves. "You belong to my department now," he murmured, his voice a dark caress. Torn paper fluttered around us like snow, framing his lethal, uncompromising stare. The torn shreds of my offer letter hadn't even hit the floor when Victor slammed a massive, 500-page ledger against my chest, pinning me to the transparent glass wall of the boardroom. The cold pain bit into my spine. Thunder rattled the floor-to-ceiling windows around us. "Find the blind spot my executives missed," he commanded, looming over me. "You have 10 minutes. Sweat traced a path down my collarbone as I scrambled through the dense rows of numbers, my pulse roaring in my ears. By the 9th minute, Arthur, a junior executive with a lingering smirk, leaned close. "Need a hand, new girl?" Arthur asked, letting his fingers brush over the back of my hand. A deafening shatter echoed through the room. Victor had just crushed his ceramic mug against the glass wall, sending scalding black coffee splashing inches from Arthur's polished shoes. The entire floor fell dead silent. I pushed Arthur away, circling a hidden deficit in red ink, and slapped the ledger onto Victor's mahogany desk. "Found it," I panted. Victor leaned across the desk, his warm breath ghosting over my ear. A rough, tattooed hand locked around my wrist, pulling me off balance. "You miscalculated one detail," he whispered. Without another word, he dragged me into his private office, shoving me inside as the heavy electronic door shut behind us with a fatal, echoing click. The metallic click of the deadbolt had barely registered before Victor threw a heavy, body-warmed suit jacket over my head, plunged into darkness. I stumbled as he hauled me into his private elevator, dragging me down into the frigid depths of the underground garage. He shoved me into the passenger seat of a customized black supercar. The engine roared to life, shaking the chassis. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Arthur's name flashed on the screen. Victor's eyes darkened into a storm. He snatched the device from my grasp and tossed it out the open window, letting it smash into fragments on the concrete. "Are you insane?" I shrieked. He slammed the pedal. The supercar tore out of the garage, slicing through the torrential rain at a terrifying speed. The sheer G-force pinned me to the leather seat, forcing me to grip his thigh just to stay upright. Tires screamed as he braked hard in front of a rival corporation's headquarters. Momentum hurled me forward, but Victor's thick arms snapped across my chest, catching me. He leaned in so close our noses brushed, his gaze burning with obsession. "From now on, your eyes stay on me," he commanded. Before I could catch my breath, a fleshy hand smacked the wet glass beside my head, revealing the sickening, leering grin of the rival company's CEO pressing against our window. The leering face smeared the rain-slicked glass, trying to peer at my legs. Victor kicked his door open with enough force to send the heavy metal crashing into the rival CEO, knocking the man backward into the deep puddles. Victor stepped into the pouring rain, a towering tyrant. "Keep your filthy eyes off her, or I'll carve them out," he warned, his tone deadly. I followed him inside a hazy cigar lounge lit by harsh neon. Thick smoke choked the air. At the long mahogany table, hostile executives sneered at my credentials, throwing crude insults. One balding man slurred his words, leaning uncomfortably close with a sloshing glass of burgundy wine, tipping it purposefully toward the collar of my silk blouse. A metallic flash blurred my vision. Thwack! Victor had seized a sharp steak knife and driven the blade half an inch into the solid wood, mere millimeters from the man's trembling fat fingers. "She speaks with my authority," Victor declared, his voice dropping an icy blanket over the horrified room. "Disrespect her again, and I will bankrupt every single one of you." He wrapped a possessive arm around my waist, marching me out of the toxic room before anyone could breathe. But the moment we burst through the club's exit doors, a blinding barrage of paparazzi flashbulbs erupted, swallowing us into white-hot light. The relentless flashbulbs pierced my vision like needles. Victor immediately shielded me with his broad frame, pulling his trench coat over my head. He shoved past the greedy lenses like a protective beast, dragging me down the wet pavement into the stormy night. I wrenched myself out of his grip, marching to a nearby bus stop. Shivering in my soaked blouse, I wrapped my arms around myself. Headlights swept over me as Arthur pulled his sleek sedan to the curb, rolling down his window to offer a dry towel. I reached out, but a massive black Maybach cut the corner, tires screaming against the asphalt. It slammed to a halt between us, spraying a wave of muddy rainwater straight across Arthur's windshield. Victor stepped out into the pouring downpour. He didn't bother with an umbrella. The rain plastered his white shirt to his chiseled abdomen, outlining every tense muscle. He marched over, grabbing my arm and pulling me away from Arthur's open door. "Let me go!" I protested, my teeth chattering. Victor's glare cut through the storm, aimed directly at Arthur. "She rides with me." Before Arthur could object, Victor hauled me toward the Maybach, shoving me into the passenger side. The heavy electronic locks engaged with a solid clack, trapping me inside as a soaking wet. Furious, Victor leaned over my trembling body in the dark. The loud clack of the locks echoed in the confined cabin. I gasped as Victor pinned me against the leather seat, the rain dripping from his sharp jawline splashing onto my collarbone. His eyes burned with an intoxicating jealousy as his hands gripped the headrest on either side of my face. "Don't let other men near you," he breathed, his voice thick with tension. Without waiting for an answer, he threw the car into drive, speeding us toward an exclusive high-end boutique. Inside, a stylist practically stripped me out of my ruined clothes, forcing me into a backless blood-red evening gown. I stared at the massive mirror, shifting uncomfortably. The plunging fabric left nothing to the imagination, exposing the intricate dark tattoos crawling up my spine. I stepped out of the dressing room, clutching the silk. Victor stood near the velvet sofas, a glass of expensive whiskey in his hand. He looked up. When his gaze hit my exposed skin and the dark ink wrapping around my back, the glass in his grip shattered into dozens of pieces. Amber liquor mixed with fresh blood dripped from his palm onto the plush carpet. He ignored the injury, stalking toward me with a terrifying, predatory grace. He stopped right behind me, raising his bloody, rough fingers to trace the sensitive ridge of my spine. His bloody fingertips tracing my spine sent a shocking jolt through my nervous system. Before I could pull away, he grabbed a luxurious, heavy black fur coat and wrapped it tightly around my shoulders, concealing my bare skin. "That ink is mine to look at," he muttered through clenched teeth. "Only mine." He forced my arm through his, marching us into the dazzling, chandelier-lit ballroom. The air buzzed with champagne clinking and idle chatter, but my stomach plummeted the moment I spotted Carter, my toxic ex-boyfriend, holding court near the center. Carter's eyes lit up with a malicious glint. He swaggered over, deliberately sloshing his wine glass so a dark crimson stain bloomed across the hem of my red dress. "Look who decided to show up," Carter sneered, his voice carrying over the music. "Sleeping your way to the top in a cheap dress, Chloe?" I raised my hand to slap him, but Victor moved faster. With a devastating kick, Victor sent a towering 3-meter champagne pyramid crashing to the floor in a symphony of shattering crystal. Silence slammed into the room. Victor's massive hand clamped around Carter's throat, lifting the struggling man inches off the marble floor. Gasping for air, his face turning a sickly purple, Carter still managed to choke out a venomous laugh. "I already had my fun with her. You're just getting my leftovers." Carter's vile words triggered something monstrous inside Victor. A sickening crunch echoed through the silent ballroom as Victor drove his massive fist into Carter's jaw, shattering the bone on impact. Blood splattered across the pristine white marble, sending the surrounding high society guests into a screaming frenzy. Victor didn't even look down at the crumpled body. His grip locked onto my wrist like a steel vice, dragging me out the back exit doors into the freezing, rain-swept alleyway. "Let me go, you're hurting me," I cried, desperately trying to wrench my arm free. Instead, he slammed me back against the rough brick wall. His chest heaved, his dark eyes bloodshot and unhinged as a flickering neon sign buzzed overhead. "Where did he touch you?" Victor roared, slamming his knuckles into the brick beside my ear. "Tell me!" I slapped him hard across the cheek. The sharp sting cracked through the pouring rain. "I am not your property!" His head turned from the impact. Slowly, he looked back at me, the madness in his stare deepening into something much more terrifying. He didn't apologize. He lunged, capturing my lips in a punishing, bruising kiss that tasted of fresh rain and copper blood. He grabbed the lapels of the thick fur coat, tearing it open with brute force, pressing my exposed, tattooed back hard against the freezing, jagged brick. The biting cold of the jagged brick against my spine contrasted with the scorching heat of his kiss. My legs buckled, threatening to drop me to the wet pavement. Victor simply scooped me up, carrying me to his supercar as if I were his plundered prize. He threw me inside, speeding off into the night toward my cheap apartment building. The hallway lights flickered ominously. We stood inside the cramped elevator, our soaking wet clothes clinging to us. The tiny space forced our bodies flush together, and I could feel every tense, rigid line of his muscles pressing firmly against my thighs. I trembled as we reached my door, fumbling through my purse for my keys. My shaking fingers missed the lock, and the metal keys clattered loudly against the cheap linoleum floor. Victor didn't wait. He kicked the wooden door open, dragging me inside and slammed the deadbolt shut. The apartment was pitch black. I reached for the light switch, desperate to see his face, but his large hand grabbed my wrist, pinning it down. "Don't turn on the lights," he murmured, his voice dropping an octave, echoing like a demon's promise in the dark. Before I could breathe, he hoisted me up, setting me firmly onto the cold marble of the kitchen counter, and the sharp sound of my dress zipper tearing apart filled the midnight silence. The sharp tearing of fabric echoed through the dark apartment kitchen. Pale moonlight spilled through the window blinds, casting long shadows over his broad, muscular back. I was trapped against the cold marble counter, his blistering kisses consuming my neck and collarbone. I tangled my fingers into his damp shirt, accidentally knocking over a stray wine glass. It shattered against the ceramic tiles, but the noise was lost beneath our heavy, ragged breaths. His thumb traced the broken edge of my zipper. Every nerve in my body screamed in anticipation. He was mere seconds from claiming me right there in the shadows. Suddenly, a relentless pounding rattled the front door, shaking its hinges. "Chloe, get out here!" It was Carter. The muffled, drunken yelling from the hallway instantly shattered the haze of lust. Victor froze. The consuming heat in his dark eyes evaporated, replaced by a chilling, murderous calm. He pulled away from my trembling body, his intense gaze fixed on the vibrating wooden door. He reached toward the knife block resting on the counter. His large fingers closed around the handle of a long, razor-sharp boning knife. He pulled it free. The cold steel caught a wicked gleam of moonlight. He pushed me gently aside, stepping away from the counter. Gripping the blade, he stalked toward the rattling front door, looking like a phantom walking straight out of hell. The steel blade sank into the kitchen's marble countertop with a deafening, metallic ring. Victor didn't hesitate. He yanked the front door wide open, his massive tattooed hand shooting out to grab Carter by the soaked collar. With a single brutal thrust, Victor slammed my ex-boyfriend against the concrete wall of the dim apartment hallway. Carter choked, his feet dangling inches above the wet floor. Victor casually pulled a solid gold lighter from his dark trousers, flicking the blue flame to life just a fraction of an inch from Carter's terrified, wide eyes. "Take one more step toward this door, and I will make you evaporate from this country," Victor hissed. He tossed Carter down the stairwell into the pouring rain like a bag of worthless garbage. The door slammed shut, instantly cutting off Carter's pathetic sputtering. Victor turned back to me, his broad chest heaving beneath his ruined shirt. The sheer, terrifying jealousy in his dark obsidian eyes threatened to swallow me whole. He closed the distance in 3 long strides, taking my face in both of his rough hands. His hot breath ghosted over my trembling lips. "Tell me exactly where he touched you," he demanded, his voice shaking with raw obsession. Instead of answering, I stood on my tiptoes, closed my eyes, and crashed my lips against his tense, furious jaw. The soft impact of my lips sent a sudden shudder through his towering frame. His pupils dilated as his arms banded around me, pulling me flush against his rigid chest. Just as he lowered his head to claim my mouth, a shrill alarm blared from my phone on the floor, slicing through the thick, dangerous tension. We jumped apart, breathless. By the next morning, the sterile, high-pressure environment of the open office floor felt like a different universe. I sat at my cubicle exhausted. Arthur sauntered over, wearing a sleazy grin and holding 2 cups of hot coffee. "Rough night," Arthur chuckled, leaning far too close. He reached out, his manicured fingers moving to brush a speck of dust from my shoulder. Before his skin could graze my blouse, a sharp, echoing crack shattered the quiet murmur of the office. Everyone froze, turning their heads toward the glass walls of the president's suite. Victor stood behind the blinds, his jaw locked in a lethal glare aimed directly at us. He had just snapped a custom, 6-figure fountain pen in half with one bare hand. Thick, black ink dripped down his tense veins like fresh blood, staining the pristine carpet. The intercom on my desk buzzed a second later. His voice crackled through the speaker, dripping with icy venom. "Chloe, get Get into my office right now. The heavy electronic door sealed shut with a pounding beep the second I stepped inside. Victor kicked the lock panel for good measure. Loosening his silk tie with a sharp tug, he hauled a 15-pound box of complex audit ledgers onto his ebony desk, the thick binders thudding against the wood. "Morgan dumped these worthless papers on you?" he muttered, his eyes dark. "If you don't finish by midnight, neither of us leaves this room." Hours dissolved into a grueling blur. By midnight, a fresh thunderstorm battered the panoramic windows. I kicked off my heels, my bare feet sinking into the plush rug as I squinted at the impossible numbers. Without warning, Victor stepped behind my chair and leaned over me, his burning chest pressed firmly against my back, the radiating heat sending a sharp shiver down my spine. He planted one hand on my armrest and reached across me with the other, his long fingers covering mine to guide the mouse. He trapped me in a cage of solid muscle. His low, accented Portuguese vibrated against my ear as he explained the data matrix. I turned my head to thank him, but my nose brushed against the hard line of his jaw. He stopped clicking. His gaze dropped slowly to my collarbone, laying bare where I had undone 3 buttons of my blouse. "Keep looking at me like that," he rasped, "and we'll be using these ledgers as a mattress." His raspy threat sent a jolt of pure panic through my veins. I shoved my chair back, grabbed my coat, and practically fled the towering glass office. He followed me into the rainy midnight streets, taking me to a small, smoke-filled Portuguese diner. After eating in tense silence, I insisted on driving my own beat-up sedan home. The desolate coastal highway stretched endlessly ahead. In my rearview mirror, the menacing silhouette of Victor's customized black supercar lurked just 15 feet behind my bumper. He drove with his headlights off, a massive apex predator stalking its prey, refusing to let any other vehicle merge into my lane. I parked outside my decaying apartment complex, struggling to gather 3 heavy bags of groceries and files. Victor stepped out of his sleek ride, his long legs eating up the distance. Without a word, he snatched the heavy bags from my aching arms. We climbed the narrow, flickering stairwell in silence. He stood on the cramped landing, his broad shoulders practically blocking out the dim overhead light as he looked down at me with an unreadable expression. My heart hammered against my ribs. I fumbled with my keys, staring at the strong tendons of his neck. "Do you want to come inside for a glass of white wine?" I blurted out, watching the dark fire instantly ignite in his eyes. Victor nudged my door open, tossing his expensive jacket onto my faded sofa. His overpowering masculine scent instantly consumed the cramped apartment. I walked into the kitchenette, reaching on my tiptoes for a bottle of wine. My sock slipped on the linoleum. "Careful," Victor growled. His arm shot out like lightning, his massive hand catching the small of my back. He pressed me gently against the marble counter. "Thank you," I breathed, my heart hammering as I poured the wine. We stood inches apart. "I didn't peg you for a mechanic," I whispered, staring at the dark tattoos wrapping his thick forearms. "I build custom V8 racing engines." His deep voice vibrated in the quiet room. "I like controlling raw power." His rough, calloused fingers lightly traced my waist, sending a sharp shiver down my spine. The alcohol blurred my sanity. Approaching the entryway, he stopped and looked down at me. "It's late. I need to leave, Chloe." Acting on pure reckless instinct, I snatched his car keys from his palm. Victor froze, his dark eyes flashing with sudden, dangerous heat. "Give those back, now." Instead of answering, I rose on my toes and pressed my lips directly against the frantic pulse beating in his neck. He inhaled sharply. The keys hit the floor with a metallic clatter as he shoved me hard against the heavy steel door. The steel door rattled under my weight as Victor's large hand gripped the back of my neck. He captured my mouth in a bruising, possessive kiss, his tongue demanding entry. My knees turned to water, but he easily wrapped his arm under my thighs, lifting my feet right off the ground. He carried me back to the kitchen, pressing my spine onto the cold dining table. He impatiently yanked my shirt upward, his scorching lips trailing a fiery path down my collarbone. I could feel the rigid, terrifying heat of him pressing desperately against my hip. I tangled my fingers into his dark hair, ready to surrender everything to him in the shadows of my apartment. Suddenly, a shrill, piercing ringtone erupted from his slacks. The noise sliced through the heavy fog of lust. Victor let out a pained, guttural groan, dropping his forehead against my chest, his lungs heaving for air. He pulled the vibrating phone from his pocket, the screen glowing with the name Lara, his formidable older sister. He didn't answer it. Instead, he stared down at me, his eyes bloodshot and hollow with aching frustration. His chest rose and fell against mine as the phone continued to scream in his palm. "Make a choice right now," he rasped, his voice raw. "Tell me to stay, or I walk out that door to attend this miserable family dinner." "Go to your dinner," I panted, shoving his heavy chest away from me. Days later, the memory of that agonizing rejection still burned as a massive steel garage door rolled open in the dead of night. Victor led me into his private underground bunker. A matte black, custom-built supercar sat in the center, its engine idling with a mechanical roar that vibrated straight through the soles of my shoes. He tossed a heavy set of keys into my palms. I slid behind the steering wheel of the beast he had built with his own hands. Victor took the passenger seat, refusing to fasten his seatbelt. He simply stared at me with an intoxicating, dangerous level of trust. I slammed the pedal to the floor. The supercar launched onto his private racing circuit, the speedometer blurring past 200 miles per hour. The sheer force pinned my spine deep into the bucket seat. Approaching a hairpin turn, I refused to hit the brakes. I jerked the steering wheel hard. The tires shrieked, billowing thick white smoke as the chassis drifted wildly, grazing the steel guardrail by mere inches. I slammed the brakes at the finish line, my body trembling with pure adrenaline. I unbuckled my harness, climbed over the center console, and straddled his firm lap, crashing my lips against his. He caught the back of my head, deepening the kiss as he traced my swollen lower lip. "You're driving," he murmured. "Makes me want to take you right on this hood." His rough thumb against my swollen lip ignited a fresh wave of heat. Victor let out a low rumble of satisfaction, his large hand sliding up the back of my thigh inside the cramped, suffocating cabin of the supercar. We were inches from crossing the final line. Suddenly, a stark, blinding flash of white light erupted from the dark bleachers outside the windshield. My pupils dilated in sheer horror, my spine locked tight. Victor's lust morphed instantly into pure lethal rage. He shoved my head down, burying my face against his broad chest to hide my identity, while kicking his door wide open. His dark eyes scanned the empty grandstands like a predator hunting in the brush, but the photographer had already vanished into the shadows. The suffocating dread followed me all the way to work the next morning. I walked down the sterile corporate corridor, clutching a stack of files to my chest. Without warning, a hand shot out from an open supply closet, grabbing a handful of my hair and dragging me into the pitch-black room. The door clicked shut, trapping me. Lucille stood there, illuminating her cruel, twisted sneer with the glow of her smartphone. "Look what I found," she whispered, shoving the bright screen directly into my face, displaying a high-definition photo of me straddling the billionaire president inside his supercar. The glowing screen illuminated Lucille's venomous smile. "If corporate sees this," she sneered, pressing me back against the metal shelving, "Victor gets a slap on the wrist. But you'll be blacklisted across the entire financial district." I snatched the phone from her grip, but she only laughed, claiming it was backed up to a secure server. Shivering, I pushed past her and stumbled out of the closet, desperate to find Victor. I spotted him down the hall, holding coffee, his eyes softening the moment they met mine. But then Morgan, the ruthless HR director, stepped out of a boardroom. Victor's expression froze into an impenetrable mask of ice. I approached him, my voice trembling as I handed him my latest audit report, hoping he could read the sheer panic in my eyes. Instead, he took the thick folder and threw it onto the floor. The heavy binder slapped the tiles, scattering hundreds of pages across the open workspace. "Do not bring me this garbage," he barked, his voice loud enough for the whole floor to hear. The sharp edge of a laminated page sliced across my bare calf. The office fell silent, dozens of eyes staring at my humiliation. I bit my lower lip until I tasted copper, glaring at the man who had held me so tenderly the night before. He didn't offer a single glance of pity as he turned, slamming his office door shut. The sharp click of his door closing snapped the last thread of my patience. I kicked off my restrictive heels, scooped up the ruined files, and charged straight into the president's suite like a wounded animal. I smashed my palm against the electronic lock, engaging the deadbolt, and slammed my fist onto the control panel. All the heavy blinds dropped simultaneously, sealing us in total isolation. "Is this what you want?" I screamed, hurling the stack of papers across his $1,000,000 ebony desk. Victor sat rigidly in his leather chair, the veins in his neck bulged, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the armrests, forcing himself to remain silent. I marched over and grabbed the lapels of his tailored suit, hot tears spilling down my cheeks. "You think pushing me away protects me? You're just a coward!" The insult finally broke his iron control. Victor shot out of his chair, letting out a raw, guttural roar. He swept his massive arm across the desk, sending his monitors, keyboards, and every single document crashing to the floor in a chaotic avalanche of destruction. He seized my waist, lifting me off the ground, and slammed me down onto the edge of the cleared desk. "A coward?" he breathed, his eyes wide with a terrifying, unhinged obsession. "Do you have any idea how long I can last without touching you?" His mouth crashed down on mine with a savage, desperate hunger, erasing the coldness of the past 24 hours. We tangled on the polished wood of his desk, our clothes half discarded, until a strange thumping noise echoed through the thin wall connecting to the HR department's storage room. Victor froze, his chest heaving. He quickly zipped up my skirt, his dark eyes narrowing. We slipped out of his office, following the muffled groans. Victor didn't bother turning the handle. He kicked the wooden door so hard the frame splintered inward. I flicked on the harsh overhead light, revealing a pathetic sight. Morgan, the terrifying HR director who constantly threatened my job, was sitting on a stack of printer paper, her blouse unbuttoned, straddling Arthur. Morgan shrieked, desperately clutching at her slipping bra, while Arthur scrambled backward, tripping over his own trousers. Victor wrapped a heavy arm around my waist, his presence filling the tiny room with an oppressive, suffocating dread. Arthur dropped to his knees, babbling for mercy. From this moment forward, both of your pathetic careers are in Chloe's hands, Victor declared, his voice a lethal, vibrating threat. He looked down at me, a victorious gleam in his dark eyes, waiting for me to relish the power. I stared at the pathetic executives, stepped out of Victor's embrace, and smoothed my skirt. I am transferring out of HR, I said coldly, walking away from the mess. The crisp white envelope of my transfer request landed flat against his broad chest. The entire corridor went deathly silent. Victor stared at the word transfer printed in bold ink. Instead of exploding, a wicked, triumphant grin stretched across his face. In front of the trembling executives, he hauled me against his chest and kissed me with unapologetic, fiery possession. "Congratulations, my girl," he whispered against my lips. "You belong to my executive team now. Come to my territory tonight, we celebrate." Hours later, the ocean wind whipped my hair as I stepped into his massive cliffside mansion. The dim, warm light of the grand dining hall revealed a 5-meter-long walnut table, covered in an extravagant seafood feast he had cooked himself. The wine flowed freely, warming my blood and melting away the corporate anxiety that had plagued me for months. When dinner ended, I stood up, turning my back to the table to look out at the crashing dark waves. I heard his heavy footsteps approaching. The solid heat of his chest pressed gently against my spine. He didn't utter a single word. His calloused fingers found the small metal clasp at the top of my evening gown. The slow, agonizing hiss of the zipper descending echoed in the quiet room, sending a rush of electricity straight to my core. The silk fabric slipped off my shoulders, pooling at my feet, and his deep, ragged exhale washed over the bare ink of my tattooed spine. His scorching lips branded the dark ink on my back, tracing a path of pure fire from my shoulder blades down to the dimples of my lower waist. My trembling knees finally buckled. Victor caught me instantly, sweeping me into his strong arms. He carried me down the long, shadowed hallway and threw me onto the vast silk sheets of his king-sized bed. He impatiently tore off his own shirt, revealing a chest thickly layered with intricate tribal tattoos and rigid muscle. Every trace of his usual ironclad restraint vanished into the dark room. He moved over me, a force of nature, his intense gaze locking onto mine as sweat beaded along his sharp jawline. The heavy mahogany bed frame creaked in rhythm with our ragged, desperate breathing. I clung to his broad shoulders, leaving faint scratches across his back as he pulled me into a blinding, euphoric oblivion. We collapsed together, tangled in the ruined silk sheets. Sometime near dawn, a harsh vibration against the wooden nightstand pulled me from a deep, exhausted sleep. I reached for my phone, rubbing my swollen eyes in the dim morning light. A message from my best friend Gemma lit up the screen. I clicked it open, my blood instantly turning to ice. It was a selfie. Gemma was lying naked in bed, pressing a sickening kiss against the sleeping cheek of Carter, my abusive ex-boyfriend. The glowing screen mocked me in the dim morning light. My trusted best friend was sleeping with the toxic man who had made my life a living hell. I threw on my clothes, ignoring Victor's sleepy, confused murmurs from the bed, and drove straight back to my small apartment. The doorbell rang before I even had time to process the agonizing betrayal. I yanked the front door open. Gemma stood there on the doormat, her eyes puffy and red, reaching out to grab my hands. "Chloe, please let me explain, it just happened, I swear." I slapped her hands away hard, shoving the illuminated screen of my phone directly into her face. "You slept with him while you were holding me? Comforting me as I cried over what he did to me?" I screamed, my voice cracking with raw disgust. Gemma's tearful facade vanished in a flash, her features twisted into an ugly, resentful sneer. "You never deserved a man like him anyway," she spat. I shoved her backward and slammed the heavy metal door right in her face, the loud crash shaking the walls. I slid down the wooden door, burying my face in my hands as my heart pounded a frantic rhythm. Suddenly, a sudden, sickening wave of nausea punched me straight in the gut. making the room spin. I slapped both hands over my mouth, my eyes going wide with a terrifying realization, and sprinted down the hall toward the bathroom. The loud rush of the toilet flushing couldn't drown out the sound of my violent dry heaving. I gripped the edge of the ceramic sink, my knuckles turning stark white as I stared at my pale, sweating reflection in the mirror. My period was exactly 2 weeks late. Panic gripped my throat like a cold, scaly snake. During those wild, reckless nights tangled in Victor's sheets, consumed by the sheer force of our mutual obsession, neither of us had used a single ounce of protection. I fumbled for my phone, trying to calculate my ovulation window through blurry, tear-filled eyes, but the screen swam as a wave of dizziness hit me. Suddenly, the electronic lock on my front door beeped rapidly. Victor had registered his thumbprint the week before. "Chloe?" His deep, frantic voice thundered through the small living room. Heavy footsteps shook the floorboards. He burst into the bathroom, freezing in the doorway when he saw me. I was slumped against the cold tiles, trembling, my arms wrapped protectively around my lower abdomen. The color drained from his tanned face, and his dark pupils expanded until his eyes were nearly black. He dropped to his knees, disregarding his expensive suit, and pulled me tight against his racing heart. "Baby," he whispered, his voice shaking with a terrifying mix of awe and dread. "Are you pregnant?" "I don't know," I sobbed against his chest, clutching his shirt in blind panic. Victor's jaw tightened. Without a word, he shot up from the floor and sprinted out of the apartment, not even stopping to grab his jacket. 10 agonizing minutes later, he returned breathless. He dumped a massive plastic bag onto the bathroom counter, spilling over a dozen expensive pregnancy tests of every brand imaginable. We sat side by side on the icy bathroom tiles. 5 plastic sticks lay lined up on the edge of the sink, slowly processing the results. The ticking clock on the wall hammered into my skull. "I just got a massive offer from a new firm," I whispered, burying my face in my palms. "I can't do this right now, Victor." Victor shifted, his large hands gently pulling mine away from my face. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek velvet box. Inside rested a breathtaking, flawless diamond necklace that blinded me even under the cheap fluorescent lights. He fastened it around my neck with unyielding authority. "No matter what those sticks say," he declared, his eyes burning with a dark, feverish devotion. "I am tired of waiting. It is time for you to move in with me permanently." As the final vow slipped from his lips, a sharp, piercing electronic beep erupted from the sink, signaling the results were ready. We lunged toward the sink, knocking shoulders in our desperation. My eyes scanned the 5 digital windows. Negative, 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 just a single line on every stick. The adrenaline crashed out of my system so fast I nearly collapsed, sliding down the vanity until I hit the floor. The suffocating weight on my chest evaporated, leaving me gasping for air. Victor stood above me, his large hands gripping the edges of the sink. He closed his eyes, inhaling a deep, ragged breath. For a fraction of a second, I saw a flicker of profound disappointment tighten his jaw. A silent mourning for the child that wasn't there. But the moment he opened his eyes, that vulnerability was replaced by a feral, possessive hunger. He reached down and hoisted me to my feet, his grip bruising. "Thank God," he murmured, his voice thick with lust. "That means I get to keep you all to myself for a little longer." The remaining fear burned away, replaced by an intoxicating rush of desire. I wrapped my legs tightly around his waist, kissing him wildly under the harsh bathroom light. He groaned, carrying my weight effortlessly as he pressed my spine flat against the cold mirror. "Since there's no baby," he growled, trailing his lips down my neck, "I don't have to hold back my strength tonight." The very next morning, Victor practically dragged me into the waiting room of the city's most exclusive private clinic to figure out my sickening symptoms. Surrounded by glowing pregnant women and nervous husbands, Victor sat beside me in his sharp, tailored Italian suit, his heavily tattooed hands resting on his knees. He radiated a terrifying, dominant aura that made everyone in the room give us a wide berth. When a clumsy patient stumbled too close to my chair, Victor's arm shot out like a whip, shielding me against his broad chest with the intense ferocity of a guard dog. Inside the exam room, the doctor confirmed my nausea was just a severe reaction to my current birth control pills. She sternly ordered me to stop taking them for at least 3 months to let my body reset. We walked out of the clinic, the bright morning sun hitting our faces. I glanced up at him, a teasing, challenging smirk playing on my lips. "The doctor said absolutely no pills," I reminded him. "Looks like you'll have to settle for cheap latex from now on." Victor let out a dark, mocking chuckle. He backed me into the shadowed corner of the hospital corridor, lowering his head to bite gently on my sensitive earlobe. "Latex? Keep dreaming," he whispered, his breath hot against my skin. "I'll just pull out at the very last second." But you better pray you can handle my speed. That dangerously possessive threat left my knees weak as he guided me out of the hospital and into a high-end corner cafe. I sank into the velvet booth, rubbing my temples as I complained about the sheer exhaustion of navigating my new corporate job and the endless drama. Victor didn't offer empty platitudes. Instead, he reached inside his jacket and slapped 2 crisp, first-class boarding passes onto the table, right next to my espresso cup. The bold letters spelled out a direct flight to Rio de Janeiro. "Tomorrow morning at 8, you are coming with me to Brazil," he commanded, leaving zero room for argument. I stared at the airline logos, my mouth falling open in shock. "Victor, I don't even have any decent summer clothes packed for a tropical trip," I protested, gesturing to my heavy wool coat. He picked up his black coffee, taking a slow sip. His dark eyes locked onto mine, burning with an arrogant, unwavering devotion. "Just bring yourself," he stated smoothly. "When we land, I will buy you the entire shopping district and I won't even blink." He reached across the small table, his rough fingers tracing the line of my jaw with a predatory slowness. "But before we get on that plane," he murmured, "you are going to need to burn off some serious energy tonight." 30,000 feet above the dark ocean, the massive engines of the Boeing jet hummed with a deep, rhythmic vibration. Inside our ultra-exclusive, fully enclosed first-class suite, Victor impatiently yanked off his silk sleeping mask and pulled me roughly onto his wide, lie-flat seat. The plane suddenly dropped, hitting a pocket of violent turbulence. I gasped, my fingers digging desperately into the crisp collar of his expensive dress shirt to steady myself. Victor used the shifting gravity to his advantage, rolling over and pinning me securely beneath his heavy, muscular frame. His rough hands immediately slid under the hem of my cashmere sweater, tracing the bare, sensitive skin of my waist. "Victor, stop it. The flight attendants could walk in here at any second," I hissed, trying to push against his immovable chest. "I booked out the entire first-class cabin," he declared, a wicked, arrogant smirk playing on his lips. He lowered his head, capturing my mouth in a bruising kiss that swallowed the rest of my frantic protests. His fingers moved with practiced ease, unfastening the final barrier of my clothes just as the overhead intercom crackled to life. A robotic female voice warned all passengers of severe incoming weather, but the storm raging outside was nothing compared to the dark danger in his eyes. "Hold on tight," he whispered against my neck. "The real turbulence is just about to begin." The suffocating weight of the plane's turbulence vanished, replaced instantly by the deafening roar of a V8 engine. Under the sultry midnight sky of Rio de Janeiro, I gripped the steering wheel of Victor's custom black supercar. The speedometer needle blurred past 200 miles per hour on his private, enclosed racing circuit. The brutal G-force pinned my spine deep into the bucket seat. The wind whipped my hair as we approached a deadly hairpin turn. Sitting in the passenger seat without a harness, Victor didn't flinch. He watched me with a dark, terrifying trust. Instead of hitting the brakes, I yanked the steering wheel hard. The tires shrieked against the asphalt, sending thick plumes of smoke into the humid air as the chassis drifted inches from the steel barricades. I slammed the brakes right at the finish line, my heart hammering against my ribs. Shaking with pure adrenaline, I unbuckled my belt, climbed right over the center console, and straddled his firm thighs. I grabbed the collar of his shirt and crashed my mouth against his. Victor caught the back of my head, seizing control of the kiss, his rough thumb tracing my swollen lip. "Baby," he murmured, his dark eyes flashing with hunger. "Your driving makes me want to take you right on this hood." The scorching memory of that Brazilian night evaporated the second I stepped back into the freezing New York corporate office. Walking down the sterile corridor, a hand shot out from the supply closet, grabbing my hair and dragging me into the pitch-black room. The door clicked shut. Lucille stood there, her face illuminated by the sickly glow of her phone screen. "You thought you were so sneaky in Rio," she sneered, shoving the screen into my face. It was a high-definition photo of me straddling Victor in the supercar on the Brazilian racing circuit. Morgan hired a private investigator. "When this leaks, Victor will get a slap on the wrist from the board, but your reputation in this city will be destroyed." Panic gripped my throat. I pushed past her, bursting out of the closet just as Victor exited the boardroom. His dark eyes softened instantly. He reached out his hand, ready to pull me into his arms right in front of the executives. My heart shattered, but I knew I had to protect him from the scandal. I recoiled, taking 3 quick steps backward. Under the shocked gaze of the entire floor, I bowed my head and forced my voice into a stiff, freezing tone. "Please maintain professional boundaries, Mr. President. Do not touch me." The suffocating silence that followed in the hallway was thicker than the Brazilian humidity, and his hand froze midair. My icy rejection left his outstretched hand frozen in midair. His dark pupils contracted as the surrounding executives began to whisper. To protect me, Victor locked his jaw, his expression hardening into an impenetrable mask of frost. "Get back to work," he ordered, his tone devoid of any warmth. The next 3 days became a living hell. Separated only by the transparent glass walls of his office, we were forbidden to even exchange a glance. He morphed into a ruthless corporate machine, dropping audit reports onto my desk without a word, addressing me only by my surname. The agonizing distance tore at my sanity. I stared at my trembling fingers, my chest aching with the loss of his heat. After a grueling shift, I walked out of the building into a torrential downpour. Having forgotten my umbrella, I trudged down the slick, dark pavement. Suddenly, a familiar black Maybach crawled to a halt beside me. The tinted window rolled down, revealing Victor gripping the leather steering wheel so hard his knuckles bled. His eyes were bloodshot, burning through the rain. "Get in the car," he growled, the raw desperation in his voice finally cracking his stoic, unbreakable facade. "I am sick of this long distance, and I am not leaving you out here." A crack of thunder masked his furious demand as he kicked his door open, marching into the storm. He hauled me over his broad shoulder, tossing me into the passenger seat before speeding toward my apartment. Once inside, he pinned me against the narrow entryway wall, rainwater dripping from his sharp jawline onto my collarbone. "Do you think I want to treat you like a stranger?" he yelled, smashing his fist into the plaster beside my head. I pushed against his soaking wet chest, hot tears mixing with the rain on my cheeks. "Then let's go public. I don't care if they ruin my career." He grabbed my face, his thumbs brushing my wet skin. "I care. I will not let those vultures tear you apart." We stood panting in the dim light, two wounded animals trapped in a corner. "If we cannot be brave enough to stand together," I whispered, my voice trembling with exhaustion, "then we need to end this right now." Victor stiffened. The pain in his dark eyes was unbearable. He stared at me for 10 agonizing seconds, the silence stretching until it suffocated us both. "As you wish," he rasped, his tall frame hunching slightly. He turned his back and walked out into the relentless storm, slamming the heavy apartment door firmly behind him. The deafening slam of that door shattered my heart. But by the next morning, despair had hardened into cold resolve. Clutching a freshly printed resignation letter, I marched toward human resources. If corporate rules kept us apart, I would break them myself. Morgan's office was empty, but hushed voices echoed from the inner storage closet. "Change the account numbers on Chloe's file," Arthur hissed in the dark. "Make it look like she embezzled the offshore funds? Perfect. Victor will fire her immediately," Morgan sneered. My pulse pounded. I kicked the wooden door open and flicked on the harsh fluorescent switch. "What the hell?" Arthur yelled, scrambling backward and crashing into a stack of archival boxes. The bright light exposed their treason. Morgan sat at a hidden terminal, frantically trying to slam the laptop shut. Her face turned chalk white. "Smile for the camera, directors," I laughed cynically. I held up my phone, recording a high-definition video of their pathetic sabotage. "This is going straight to the board." "Delete that right now, you little aw!" Morgan shrieked. She lunged forward like a rabid animal, her sharp nails bared, desperate to snatch the device from my hands. Before she could reach me, a massive, heavily tattooed arm shot past my shoulder from the doorway. Victor's hand clamped down in a suffocating grip around her throat. Victor kicked the wooden door frame, splintering the trim as he pulled Morgan back. He stood before me like an enraged titan, casting a terrifying shadow over the two trembling executives. "If you ever try to touch her again," Victor warned, his voice a low, lethal rumble that shook the floorboards, "I will ensure your families beg for scraps on the streets of this city." Arthur sobbed, kneeling on the cold tiles as he begged for his pathetic career. Victor calmly took my phone, forwarded the rousing video to his secure server, and stepped hard onto Arthur's outstretched hand, making the man whimper. "From this second forward, Chloe is your master," he declared, his gaze freezing them in place. "If she loses a single hair, this evidence of corporate treason will hit the front page of every financial outlet in America." The threat delivered, Victor turned toward me. The murderous glint in his eyes vanished instantly, replaced by a desperate, hopeful warmth. He reached out his broad arms to pull me into his familiar embrace. My expression remained a blank mask. I sidestepped his touch, raising the crisp white envelope containing my formal resignation and slapping it flat against his solid, muscular chest. "Please sign this document immediately, Mr. President," I said softly, stepping back and watching his smile falter. The sharp smack of the envelope against his chest sucked all the air from the room. Victor stared down at the bold resignation printed on the paper, his dark pupils dilated with sheer terror, his breathing turning ragged. "You are leaving me?" he choked out. the raw panic cracking his intimidating facade. "No," I replied, holding his frantic gaze. "I am leaving this toxic corporation." I stepped closer, my voice steady and clear. "As long as I am your assistant, they will use their pathetic rulebook against us. I am severing that chain." I stood on my toes, grabbing his expensive silk tie and pulling his face down to my level. "I am a free woman now. So do you want to take me on a real date?" Victor froze, his mind struggling to process the sudden shift. Then, an unrestrained, joyous laugh erupted from his chest. He grabbed the resignation letter and ripped it into a dozen pieces, tossing them into the air like confetti. As the white shreds rained down around us in the dingy hallway, he wrapped his massive arms around my waist and lifted me right off the feet. "To hell with their rules!" he roared, ignoring the stunned executives behind us. He captured my lips in a dizzying, triumphant kiss that tasted of absolute, intoxicating freedom. The torn paper had not even settled on the carpet before Victor carried me down the corridor, straight into his panoramic glass office. He smashed his fist against the control panel on the wall. Within 3 seconds, the heavy electronic locks engaged, and every single blind dropped shut, sealing us in total private darkness away from the prying eyes of the corporate floor. "One last time," he rasped, his voice dripping with unrestrained hunger. Like a beast unleashed, he lifted me effortlessly and pressed my back against the floor-to-ceiling glass window, ignoring the panoramic view of the city. His rough fingers worked frantically to undo the buttons of my restrictive blazer. I arched my back as his scorching lips trailed down my neck, his hands mapping the curves he had been denied for days. The thick safety glass cooled my feverish skin as the midday sun peeked through the slats of the blinds, casting golden lines over his shifting, muscular shoulders. The overwhelming intensity of his touch pushed me to the brink of my sanity, making me cry out his name. He gripped my waist, his dark eyes locking onto mine with burning possession. "Tell me," he demanded in a breathless whisper, "whose woman are you now?" The echoes of my breathless answer still rang in my ears the following morning. I stood outside a towering skyscraper in the financial district, wearing a pristine new suit, ready to conquer the world. For 2 exhausting hours, I sat before a panel of elite directors, dismantling their complex financial traps with razor-sharp precision. When I walked out of the glass doors with a lucrative offer letter in my hand, I froze. Parked right by the curb was the sleek black Maybach. Victor stood leaning against the hood, wearing dark sunglasses and a tailored suit that commanded the attention of every passing executive. The billionaire titan looked like a lethal bodyguard waiting just for me. Seeing the paper in my grip, he pulled off his sunglasses. Disregarding the stunned whispers of the Wall Street crowd, he closed the distance and pulled me into a deep, possessive embrace. "Brilliant work, my queen," he murmured, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead. He opened the passenger door, his hand resting on the small of my back. "But your trials are not over," he noted, a rare, subtle tension tightening his sharp jawline as he guided me into the leather seat. "Now it is your turn to face a much harder panel of judges tonight. My parents are demanding to meet you." "Meet your parents tonight?" I shrieked, but the roar of the Maybach's engine drowned out my panic. We arrived at a sprawling, cliffside estate overlooking the crashing ocean. Pushing open the heavy oak doors, I was led into a cavernous dining hall where 4 pairs of highly critical eyes locked onto me. Sitting at the long mahogany table was his father, Antonio, a massive man with faded tattoos who radiated the dangerous aura of a mafia don. Beside him sat Victor's older sisters, Lara and Luana, their sharp features painted with flawless makeup and dripping with condescension. My palms sweat profusely, but Victor squeezed my hand under the table, his firm grip anchoring my racing heart. I braced myself for cruel insults or a blank check to leave him. Instead, his mother, Eve, suddenly pushed back her chair. She rushed around the table and pulled me into a bone-crushing hug. "Thank the heavens this stubborn boy finally brought you home," she beamed, shattering the family's terrifying facade in an instant. The evening transformed into a loud, warm celebration. Hours later, Victor dropped me off at my apartment. I had barely stepped inside when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find my own parents standing in the hallway, lugging heavy suitcases, having flown in unannounced for a surprise visit. I stood frozen in the doorway as my parents pushed past me, dropping their heavy suitcases onto the living room floor. At that exact moment, Victor walked out of my tiny kitchen. He had taken off his dress shirt, displaying his imposing, heavily tattooed chest, and was wearing my bright pink floral apron while flipping a prime steak in a skillet. "What the hell is this?" my father, Carl, a broad-shouldered basketball coach, barked, his fists instinctively clenching. The 2 massive men stared at each other across the cramped room, the air thick with the explosive tension of a looming brawl. I rushed forward to intervene, but Victor remained remarkably calm. He plated the perfectly seared ribeye, carried it to the small dining table, and pulled out a chair. "Mr. Torres, I hear you just got off a long flight," Victor said smoothly, projecting absolute respect. "Please, try my cooking." My father narrowed his eyes, picked up a fork, and took a reluctant bite. The tense scowl on his face melted into pure, undeniable delight. Within 20 minutes, my parents were laughing, completely charmed by the lethal billionaire who knew his way around a kitchen. After they finally left for their hotel, the apartment grew quiet. I turned around to thank him, but Victor was suddenly down on one knee, pulling a black velvet box from his pocket. The sharp snap of the velvet box opening echoed in the quiet living room. Inside rested a breathtaking, pigeon-blood pink diamond the size of a marble. Even in the dim light of my cheap apartment lamps, the sheer, excessive luxury of the gem pierced my vision. Victor looked up at me from his knee, his dark eyes stripped of their usual arrogant armor, revealing a raw, desperate vulnerability. "Chloe," he murmured, using my full name as his rough fingers gently cradled my shaking hand. "I cannot tolerate another day of my life without you by my side. Wear this ring. Prove to me that you are mine, and let me be your husband." Hot tears spilled over my eyelashes, blurring the magnificent stone. I extended my left hand, my breath hitching as he slid the heavy platinum band onto my ring finger. It was a perfect, binding fit. "Yes," I sobbed, a brilliant smile breaking across my face. The instant that single word left my lips, Victor's vulnerability vanished. He surged upward like an unchained beast, his hands gripping the backs of my thighs. He lifted me off the carpet, pinning my back hard against the hallway wall. "Tonight?" He growled, his eyes burning with dark fire. "I am going to leave marks on you that will never wash off." His dark declaration was the only warning I received before he tore the silk fabric of my blouse right down the middle. My legs wrapped tightly around his waist as he carried me into the bedroom, his searing kisses mapping every inch of my neck. I tangled my fingers into his dark hair, the heavy pink diamond on my hand catching the faint moonlight as I left desperate, shallow scratches down his rigid, muscular back. He pressed my wrists into the mattress, his lips branding my collarbone as he demanded me to call him my husband. The heavy wooden bed frame battered against the wall, echoing the frantic, intoxicating rhythm of our absolute surrender. We chased that peak until my voice gave out, collapsing together in a tangle of ruined sheets and slick sweat. The dizzying memories of that fiery night faded into a blur of passing seasons. 4 years vanished in the blink of an eye. The calendar pages turned until I lay heavily pregnant in our cliffside mansion. At exactly 5 in the morning, a sharp, agonizing cramp jolted me awake from a deep sleep. A sudden rush of warm fluid soaked through the expensive mattress, pooling beneath my heavy belly. "Victor!" I screamed, digging my manicured nails into his bare, scarred shoulder in sheer, unadulterated panic. "Wake up, the water just broke!" My terrified scream shattered the peaceful silence of the sprawling estate. Victor shot up from the pillows, his face draining of all color when he saw the dark stain spreading across the sheets. He didn't even bother throwing on a shirt. He grabbed his car keys, scooped my heavy, pregnant body into his arms, and sprinted toward the garage like a madman. A massive contraction hit me like a freight train. I curled into a ball in the passenger seat of the Maybach, cold sweat plastering my hair to my forehead. Victor drove like a demon, tearing through the quiet dawn streets and running 3 red lights. The veins in his forearms bulged as he gripped the steering wheel, his voice trembling as he urged me to stay awake. Tires screeched violently as we stopped at the emergency bay. Nurses swarmed us, pulling me onto a stretcher. The doctor pressed hard against my stomach as we rushed down the blinding white corridor. "The baby is breech feet first," the doctor shouted. "Prep for an emergency C-section immediately!" The red lights above the surgical theater began to flash frantically. The excruciating pain dragged me down into darkness, my last fading sight being Victor fighting desperately against 3 burly security guards, roaring my name with tears in his eyes as they physically blocked him from breaching the operating room doors. The frantic, rapid beeping of the heart monitor was the only sound anchoring me to the physical world. The icy bite of the scalpel sliced through my abdomen, lost beneath the hazy fog of heavy anesthesia. Through the chaotic blur, I heard the surgeon's panicked voice shout, "She's hemorrhaging! Clamp that artery now!" Outside in the sterile corridor, the ruthless corporate tyrant who crushed his rivals without mercy was reduced to a broken man. Victor fell to his knees on the linoleum floor, burying his face in his large hands. His broad shoulders shook violently as he wept, begging the universe not to take his entire world away. Just as the frantic, blaring alarms of the critical heart monitor threatened to consume the room, a powerful, soaring cry of a newborn baby shattered the silence. Hours later, I fluttered my heavy eyelids open in a sunlit VIP recovery room. Victor sat beside my bed, his dark eyes bloodshot and swollen. Cradled gently in his massive, tattooed arms was a tiny infant wrapped in a soft pink blanket. He leaned down, placing our daughter carefully onto my chest before kissing the stray tears from my cheeks. The giant pink diamond on my finger caught the morning sun, scattering brilliant light across the walls. "Rest now, my beautiful wife," he whispered, his voice trembling with overwhelming devotion. "We are finally whole."